Last, where we share ideas to help families tackle major issues. I'm your host, Regina DeMeo, and with me today is Deena who's been helping children for the last 16 years in Montgomery County. Thanks so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
So, what are the issues you see most often that come up with children, like teenagers?
Most often with teenagers are relational issues, there's family issues, divorce issues, anything that is kind of a blip in their radar. So,
like, what do you mean by relational issues? Is it between peers?
Right. I mean, a lot. I work in the school system. I work with children every day, and they argue. They don't have conflict resolution skills. So I often see them because they can't resolve whatever is on their mind, bugging them, hampering, them from focusing in the classroom setting. Or I see them in my private practice, and they're having the same issues, but they're mostly having them in the school system, at home. It's, hampering their functioning.
How do you know whether it's an issue that is related to something that's going on at home versus perhaps like ADHD? Is there a way to screen out what's causing them to not focus?
No, actually, because anxiety and depression often presents itself like ADHD symptoms. So here you're having a child who's not able to focus, who's distractible, whose grades are dropping. I mean, all of the telltale signs for ADHD, also telltale signs for anxiety, depression.
So in school, what would happen? They would just send them to the school counselor and say, talk to this child because we're seeing a lack of focus. Is that what happens?
Yeah, or they're acting out in the classroom, so they're arguing with their peers, they're snatching papers from each other, they're having disagreements at recess. They're disturbing the classroom environment so they can't learn and the other students can't learn. So often they'll send them probably to the front office first, and then the front office will send them to the counselor. And if the problem cannot be resolved, in the counseling setting at the school, hopefully the counselor will say, I would suggest, outside therapy or, something to help them outside of the school setting, because the school can only do so much.
Have you seen where parents are maybe saying, like, this is not my problem, like this is a school problem to solve? Does that happen?
Not that often.
Okay.
I mean,
thank God.
Once a parent is involved, parents, I think inherently they care so much about their children.
Right.
They want them to be successful. Of course it is a little annoying that your child is not behaving themselves, but they're learning. They're learning in the school setting. They're learning at home. So you want to, have parent involvement and, whatever you can do to get them on board so that, we're all working as a team, the better.
Right. Now, there's this book that you really like, Magic, 1, 2, 3 Magic, is that right?
Yes, I love 1, 2, 3 Magic. I'm always recommending that book because it's a really easy program. It's a behavioral system for children like age 2 to 12.
Okay.
It's basically, 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out. And whatever program you want to employ to, give your kid a couple of chances to modify their behavior and then exclude them from whatever the fun activity is, fine.
Okay.
But 1, 2, 3 Magic is a fantastic book for parents. It's easy, and you have to read it, and you and your partner need to be on the same page.
The two parents. You mean?
Yeah. Whoever is at home. So if it's grandma and grandpa, or if it's mom and grandma, or whoever it is that are the adults in charge, both need to be on the same page.
But they're not always on the same page. So what happens when, like, for example, one parent is into spanking and the other one is not? Does that come up sometimes?
Yeah, that comes up. They all come up. It is hard. Hopefully you can reason with the person that is spanking, because often when you have a child that's being spanked at home, they'll come and act out in school. Mm-hmm. They're angry, they're annoyed. Nobody wants to be hit. I don't want to be hit either, know? So, a child's not really going to learn the lesson. They're going to learn, I've done something wrong, and now I have this, violence or hurt against me. It doesn't really teach them, the reason that you've done this, the reason you're getting this punishment is because you've done A, B, and C, and you need to modify your behavior. Ground them, take away privileges, their phone, TV time. I mean, there's lots of things out there that people can take away from other people that they really enjoy. So, use those things before spanking. It doesn't really teach much.
Right. I think I read somewhere that instead of having the child reflect on the bad behavior that got them in trouble, they focus on the parent that hit them and that bad behavior. So they're not even using the timeout properly.
Right. And then they're completely annoyed, and, it doesn't solve much. And then they often end up in the counseling office anyways complaining about their parent. And, hopefully a good counselor will say, well, what got you to that point? Tell me what happened right before you got spanked or right before you got hit. And then you can explore that with the child and, ask them what they might do differently.
Now, at a certain point, schools do have an obligation to report depending on the level of violence that's going on at home. Is that correct?
Right. You cannot hit your child with any foreign object. So you can't hit them with a switch or a brush or an extension cord. I'm just thinking
like a belt.
Yeah, or a belt. I'm thinking of all the things that, are things that people often hit people with.
Mine was a fly swatter. I got hit with a fly swatter.
Oh, really?
Yeah. To this day, I hate fly swatters. It's like, ugh.
I think that you can't do that either. You can't hit with a foreign object. You can't leave any sort of marks or bruises. What's the point of all that?
No, it makes sense, but I don't know that everybody realizes that what the rules are and that there is actually a duty to report.
Right. So anybody in this school is obligated, is liable, and has the duty to report. So if a child walks in and there's a bruise on their face, there's a bruise on their arm, there's a bruise on their leg, and the child says, I was hit with this belt and this is how I got it, that person must report it to Child Protective Services. They can't not report it. They will lose their job.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So when a parent comes in and they're irritated with the principal, the assistant principal, the school counselor, that might not be the person that reported it at all. A next door neighbor might have reported it. So, and then Child Protective Services legally has to investigate physical abuse, I believe, within 24 hours. So that's, once it's in Child Protective Services' hands, it's their job. Right.
So going back to changes that go on at home, like if a couple's getting divorced, right? How does the school deal with that, or how do you deal with that when the child is acting out because there's a situation going on at home?
Well, most often it is really helpful when a parent will call the school counselor and say, we're getting separated, we're getting divorced, I want to give you the heads up. Could you, maybe touch base with my child, or could you maybe relay that information to the teacher? What a parent says to the counselor is confidential. It shouldn't be, like gossip around the school, but if the parent says, could you please relay this information, it is really helpful. It is really helpful. The teacher can look out for, signs that the kid is unhappy or dejected or withdrawn or screaming out when they don't usually scream out. Just behaviors that are unusual for that child. And the teacher could say, hey, do you need a little time to talk with the counselor? Do you need a little time out of the classroom? Do you want to go take a walk and get a drink of water? Regroup yourself. Come back in. With knowledge, we can create accommodations, any accommodation really, that will help the child focus and, get back on track, feel calm, feel supported. All the things that you want for your kid.
No, that makes sense. Yeah. I just don't think that people really think how much it impacts a child. It's like they think it's an adult problem and that the child has no clue what's really going on.
Right. It is amazingly disruptive to a child's life. It is really like pulling the rug out from under them. Everything that they are accustomed to, everything that they feel comfortable with, they think will be lost. And, I would suggest to parents, to sit down with the child and say, we both love you. We will still be there for you. We are going to make this as smooth as possible, so that a child can still feel that my parents are still working for my best interest, which most parents are. Most parents want the best for their children. I would never think a parent would want anything less.
But sometimes, unfortunately, you can't stay in the same school district. You can't stay in the same house. And so there are going to be these changes. And I guess what you're saying is the school is better off knowing early on so that they can try and keep an eye out for how the child is doing.
Right. And often in the school setting, we run divorce support groups for the kids.
What do you mean by that?
Changing family groups. Like weekly, for example, I will run groups of other students that I'm aware of that are going through similar issues, losses or divorces or whatever, social skills, children who need help in different kinds of areas. And most often I'll take the kids for their lunchtime, they'll come down to my office, and we talk about how they're feeling, let them know that they're not alone. Look at, we have 10 other students in here. Here's your support system. You can discuss whatever you want. It's confidential. It's, a place where you can feel cared for.
So you, as you're monitoring this support group, you could not get called into a divorce hearing and have to testify about what this child said at that setting. It's confidential.
It is confidential, although I have been subpoenaed.
So,
great. I've been subpoenaed from Child Protective Services also.
Oh.
So, and then of course I'm, at their mercy. But,
It usually doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen hardly at all.
Okay.
And, hopefully, everything is, respected and, hopefully I don't have to give too much information.
Yeah. So is the point really to normalize the process for them to realize that, losses are a part of life? And
yeah, hopefully it does. And also, hopefully, whatever they are experiencing and whatever they are feeling, they do understand that it's normal and that there are people that will support them and help them and care for them, whether it's in their immediate family, whether it's in the school system, whether it's a therapist completely outside of those groups. There are lots of adults that are there to help.
That's great. We're going to take a short break, and then we'll be right back.
Listen, I know you're upset, but it was just one date. And dating's like the stock market. There's ups and downs and ups and so always buy low.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. There are thousands of teens in foster care who would love to put up with you.
Welcome back to Making It Last. I'm your host, Regina DeMeo, and with me today is Deena Kotluski. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks.
So we're talking about support groups for children in school. Does there come a time where maybe you say to the parents and call them and say this child might actually benefit from one-on-one therapy, or do you encourage the children to go and ask for it? How does that work?
Occasionally I will ask the child if I am allowed to call their parent.
Okay.
I don't just pick up the phone and call them. I will ask if that's okay, if maybe what we're talking about in group, I can share with the parent. I can't even think of a time when a kid has said, no, you can't call my mom or dad. So,
wow.
I think they trust what is happening in the process. They trust that I'm not going to, throw them under the bus or something.
Right.
And if they do need, further support, I want the parent to be able, to know that and to have resources outside of the school system that they can get additional supports.
Do you think the parents are so busy these days? They're, the two parents are usually working nowadays, and then by the time you come home, I don't know, by the time I come home and I make dinner and it's homework and then, shower time and reading time, I know everything is very rushed. Do you think that parents, unless they make an effort, may not realize what's going on with the child?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, parents are focused on, providing for the family and, making a good household for the child, and they are so completely overwhelmed. But really, if you take 10, 15 minutes a day with nothing else, no TV, no phone, no iPod, no electronics, you guys go out for a walk the dog together, go to the park, the payoff will be immeasurable. I mean, a child who gets to spend time with their parent daily, I mean, that's a fantastic gift.
You're talking about quality time, not just right.
Right. And also, if you can't work out quality time, you know, you're preparing dinner, you're running around the house, you're folding the laundry.
Right.
You know, have your child get involved. Give them jobs to do. Set the table. Cook dinner with me. Let's fold the laundry together. Let's do the laundry together. Let me show you how. You know, every moment a child, you know, that they have with their parent, I mean, it's really important.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, I remember those precious moments with my grandmother, because my grandmother's the one that was home. And yeah, like I'd come home and there's milk and cookies waiting for me, and then, you know, we would spend some time together where she'd ask me about my day, and you know, then she had to go back to doing everything else. But it was, like you said, it's maybe just 10 or 15 minutes, but it was awesome.
Right. I mean, anything, even, you know, ironing together, it's the same. I have these same memories, you know, with my grandmother who would sit and iron and spray the clothes, and I would watch her and we would talk, and it was a nice time together.
Yeah. And I also remember what you said about, like, the changes. I mean, there was a time where my grandmother left the house, and I was in 3rd grade, and I remember we were doing fractions, and math is not my strength. It's never been my strength, and I have to tell you, to this day, I have an emotional, like, visceral reaction to math equations. It's, you know, I don't know, maybe because it's tied to that. I don't, you know?
It is amazing. I mean, I think, honestly, if adults remind themselves what upsets them, what they dislike, how they like to be treated, how they don't like to be treated, that's the same exact thing for a kid. I mean, a kid is not any different. They have emotions. They have feelings about things. I mean, if your closest loved one, as an adult, if your closest loved one walked out of the house, wasn't available for a year, I mean, it would be devastating. It would be upsetting to any adult.
You're right.
So
it's just that they lack the skills to actually communicate that.
Right. So, you know, modeling, showing them how to talk, sitting and talking. If you're sitting and talking with a child, they're going to learn, oh, okay, I see my mom do it. Oh, I see my dad do it. Oh, I can do that too. This makes me feel really good when they do this. I think I'm going to perpetuate that. I'm going to talk to somebody else in that nice, kind way. You know, it's paying it forward.
It makes sense. Well, speaking of that, so where do you think bullying comes from? Because that's like a big, you know, thing these days, I feel. Does that stem from stuff going on at home that leaks out?
I wouldn't, I don't want to blame the parents or
of course not.
something. But, yeah, it's often a learned behavior at home. You know, whether a mother or father are not getting along with each other and they're observing bullying behavior, or if the parent is bullying the child, or especially if an older sibling is bullying a younger sibling, which I think sometimes parents are like, oh, they're just, you know, siblings. It's no big deal. It is a big deal. I think it's a big deal.
Well, how do you define bullying? Like, especially in like a sibling situation. I mean, I don't know that, I only have one, so I don't have that issue. I was only one, so didn't have that issue. But how would you define bullying?
Bullying would be consistent mistreatment. So whether it's verbal mistreatment, and it's consistent. It's not one time like, oh, you stink, I don't like you. It's every day, you stink, I don't like you, you stink, I don't like you.
Or you're fat every day.
Anything that is like a consistent, repetitive behavior, whether it be verbal, whether it be physical, I mean, you know, it's not good. So, you know, maybe what's legally defined as bullying would be different, but it really is just repetitive, negative behavior towards one person.
So in school, how do you teach a child that is like a victim of bullying? How do you teach them to address it?
Well, we role play. I mean, we do a lot of different ways, you know, to teach them how to address bullying issues, whether it be role play, whether it be a counseling lesson in the classroom. But I find when a kid can really act it out, say, no, stop bullying me, or no, don't do that, I don't like it. They are going through the motions of how to handle themselves in an uncomfortable situation. And once you do it once, wow, it kind of isn't that difficult. Maybe I'll try it again. And they carry themselves, with more confidence, and it's just, a matter of practicing. And really, if the kid can't handle it themselves, they need to go talk to any adult that will listen. Hopefully somebody in the school system will listen, the counselor, the teacher, the parent if it's happening at home, and, help them get that behavior stopped.
I imagine it would be different depending on, like, we all have our normal, like, reactions for how we deal with fear, right? Like it's the fight, flee. Some people become paralyzed. Some are fighters. I'm definitely more in that realm. But my son is more of like a walk away kind and would want to avoid it. It's interesting how each one of us is wired differently. So depending on how you're wired, I guess you guys have to work more with that child.
Right. And actually, it might be a very smart move to walk away frequently,
I'm learning that.
Yeah, it's not a negative thing. I mean, I know, certain parents handle things in certain ways, and they see their kids doing something else, and they're like, wait, that's not going to work. But it is actually amazing. I've watched so many children behave in so many different kinds of ways, and I'm, waiting to see what's going to happen, and they work it through. I mean, they're amazing. Those little kids are pretty amazing. So, trust that what they are doing, that their instincts might be all right. Sometimes they're not, but, they might be okay.
No, that's a good point.
Yeah.
So, with the actual bully himself or herself, like, what does the school usually do with that person?
They're very aggressive about ending bullying and about stopping anything that remotely is bullying or negative behavior towards one student. But often they are sent to the counselor. Often the parents are called. Parents come in. There's a lot of ways to deal with the bully, but usually it's the bully who's feeling, inadequate or somehow less than somebody else. So they're trying to assert themselves and, be strong. But there are other ways to be strong and, show your confidence, work on your schoolwork, be a better reader than somebody else, be a faster runner than somebody else. Or if you can't even do those things, think of those things in your mind. You know what? Everyone's really good at something,
right.
Think about what you're good at and focus on that. And everyone's not great at everything. So, there's always going to be someone better than you. There's always going to be someone worse than you, but be confident with what you have.
Right, and basically learning that putting someone else down is really not going to help you look that much better.
Right. And a lot of other kids that I've spoken to who watch a bully, they don't want to have anything to do with that person. They realize, wow, that person is not nice. They'll probably do that to me. I don't want to be friends with them. So it's not only who the bully is affecting, it's all the observers of the bullying.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Wow. So is there any other thing that you want to maybe have parents be on the lookout for their children to make sure that they're doing okay?
I think mostly any change in behavior. Any change in behavior, address it. Don't be like, ooh, my kid is staying up really late. I guess I'll let them stay up. Ask them, what's up? Or, especially with the computer and the internet. I mean, kids are on the internet till late at night, not getting good sleep, not able to focus the next day. You don't know what sites they're going on. I mean, I think the internet is a real hazard for children and adolescents that are being exposed to all sorts of things that they really shouldn't be exposed to. Parents need to be very vigilant about that and, set up parental safeguards or time limits for the computer. At 30 minutes, the computer goes off or whatever
Okay.
they feel is appropriate for their household. But there needs to be, I would say, pretty strict limits on the computer and access to it.
But how would you do that if the child has a computer in their room and you think they're going to bed, but then they turn it back on? Like, how do you really monitor that?
Yeah, I don't know if there should be a computer in their bedroom or TV or really any electronics. I mean, your bedroom legitimately is to, go to sleep and rest. You need time for your brain to, regenerate and relax. It's really important. I mean, you are shaping the habits of this little person for the rest of their lives. And there's really not any reason for electronics to be in their bedroom.
No, I happen to agree, but I know that there's some parents where there's a TV, there's a computer, that everything that kid needs is in that room, and they just shut the door, and they could be up till midnight. Nobody knows. Mm-hmm.
And frequently they are. And then the next day in school, they're falling asleep in class. Nobody knows why. It's such a mystery. I mean, avoid the whole thing. You just don't need it.
No, I mean, you and I grew up in an era where we didn't have cell phones in the beginning, and we didn't have computers, and certainly not laptops and these little portable devices that we could text at night to our friends all over. No, we didn't have. So these are, I think, emerging issues that we didn't have experience with on our own growing up, so it's sort of hard to figure out what's the right limitation.
Right. And, I mean, even if a child is complaining and whining, I need my iPad, I need my whatever, they don't need it. They need air, they need food, they need water, they need playtime, they need love. Those are the important things.
No, that totally makes sense. So, if somebody wanted to contact you and, find out more information, or if there are resources you think that they should read, like, what would you recommend?
Well, to contact me would be my website, therapistdeena.com, or, there are so many resources out there. I would always, talk to a licensed therapist or somebody who could guide you, because there are so many books. There's websites, there's, behavior charts, there's all kinds of things out there, but really, as a parent, you might not know, about these things. And if you can have somebody who's really savvy at maybe understanding the school system and understanding therapeutic issues, understanding child development, all of those things are really important. Call a few people, see who you click with.
And you're saying the school is actually a very good first resource.
It's a great first resource, and psychologytoday.com, that's another great resource that has all kinds of fantastic connections, websites, whatever.
Yeah, I like that one, because you can actually put in by zip code and say, well, I'm in the 20814 zip code, and then it'll have everybody's little bio with a picture. You can actually see, like, I've seen your picture, and then I know what you do. That's a great resource that I enjoy.
And I think also when you are looking for a therapist, and something really important, and maybe people don't recognize this, but maybe the first person you're not going to click with. So, have a couple, call a few people and see who you connect with. I mean, we all don't connect with each other, you know, so find somebody that you think you'll feel comfortable with, and, you think is knowledgeable on your particular issue. If you're dealing with grief and loss, don't call somebody who's a specialist in ADHD. It's not necessarily a good match.
Right. No, that makes sense. Well, thank you so much for being on today.
Thank you.
And thank you all for watching. So if anybody wants to be a volunteer guest, that would be great. Or if you have show ideas, you can contact me at genxsmarty@gmail.com. Thank you so much, and tune in next time to Making It Laugh.